When I was working for Disney Feature Animation, we were getting ready to start production on a film called Lilo Stitch. The decision had been made early on that the backgrounds for that film were going to be painted in watercolor instead of acrylic. The directors were trying to recreate that soft background mood that the early Disney films had, like Pinocchio and Bambi. I'd heard the painters in the background department quietly grumbling about it. Making that switch from acrylic to watercolor was a pretty big deal for them. They were all high-caliber professionals, but many of them had never had the opportunity to try painting with watercolor before. One of the artists told me that learning to paint with watercolor was like running through the woods while trying to control a poorly trained dog. Once you set it free, it has its own agenda, and it has no regard for yours. I understand where his frustration was coming from. Watercolor is unlike any of the other traditional mediums. First of all, they all tend to stay pretty much where you put them, whereas watercolor sort of has a mind of its own. You have to be somewhat willing to allow it to wander and make its own decisions. It's the only medium that's transparent by nature. All other color mediums require light to bounce off of its surface to expose color. With watercolor, the light passes through the pigment and bounces off the paper to reveal color. The white of the paper is actually employed as part of the color mixing strategy. It's weird that it doesn't dry the color you originally mix and apply. It dries a couple of dye lots lighter, so you have to kind of adjust for that. They also dry less intense than what you originally mix, so you find yourself having to use brighter, more pure hues than you would with an opaque medium. Sometimes I don't even mix colors with watercolor. I just put two pure colors in a wet spot and let them duke it out. It's way more fun to let your results be kind of a surprise. You can always restate a color if it gets washed out for some reason. There are methods of totally controlling watercolor. I've seen artists choke chain it off by slowly and carefully applying pigment in layers and slowly building up from light to dark, letting applications dry completely before painting the next layer. God, that would make me insane. Artists that are unwilling or too frightened to share that control tend to end up with flat, joyless paintings, or just making a big angry mess. I don't think I could disagree more with the crabby background painter. Watercolor is awesome. It's my all-time favorite sauce. It's never boring or predictable. You just have to allow the paint to have some of the say in the finished product. There are so many great advantages to watercolor. Its portability, it's easy to travel with, no smelly, flammable solvents, it's fast to use, fast to dry, and water can be found pretty easily everywhere. I've even used ocean water when it was all I had. It helps to look at paintings by other artists like Sargent and Zorn. Child Hassam and Donald Teague are also great. Check out any books you can find by a guy named Charles Reed. I've found his suggestions to be super helpful. There's no need to make this harder than it is. Like anything else, patience and practice will get you there. I really think the goal should be just to have fun and not take watercolor too seriously. Art is not supposed to hurt. If it's any comfort to my buddies in the background department at Disney, I thought their efforts for Lilo and Stitch absolutely paid off. The results were lovely. It also proves that it's possible to gain control over watercolor fairly quickly. Think about what the effect of that kind of forced spontaneity would have on your other mediums. This is Ronnie Williford. Everyone stay safe and get your paper dirty.